In this video, I'm gonna share with you 5 tips to help you get the most when it comes to shooting video out of your Mini SE. So if you're looking to make your shots look more cinematic, more professional, then hopefully these tips will be helpful to you. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. What is up, you guys? Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Devin. I've had a lot of questions and comments on some past videos that I did with the DJI Mini SE and just how I accomplished the high quality cinematic looking shots that I got. So in this video, I wanted to share with you guys 5 key settings that you want to make sure that you have dialed in on your Mini SE to get the best quality out of your drone. So with that said, let's jump into it. All right, so the first tip that I have for you guys is to shoot in the highest resolution possible. And on the Mini SE, that is 2.7K. Shooting in the highest resolution possible is gonna make your footage look great straight out of camera and give you more range when it comes to editing. So say that you're editing to a 1080 timeline, shooting in 2.7K is gonna give you some room to zoom in, zoom out, reframe, things like that. Now, a little trick of the trade is if you want the best quality on YouTube, actually edit everything to a 24 frame timeline, which there's some debate between 24 and 30 for best quality on YouTube, but I always like to do 24 for that cinematic look. Then I also edit and export my project in a 4K resolution. So even though I'm shooting 2.7K on the Mini SE, I upscaled that to 4K. It actually held up pretty good. You can do that to some footage and it makes it look terrible, but it looked good for me. And then on YouTube, upload it as a 4K video and looks great. Now, why wouldn't you just always shoot in 2.7K? Well, this goes into our next tip, which is choosing your frame rate. Now, when choosing your frame rate, you have 30 frames at 2.7K, 25 frames per second or 24 frames per second when shooting 2.7K. But if you want a little bit higher frame rate and you want a little bit of slow motion, then you may want to shoot at 60 frames per second, but that's going to bring you down in resolution to 1080, which isn't bad. It just is what it is, and that's going to be the highest resolution you can shoot for that frame rate. But I have found that if you want the absolute best looking footage, shoot in either 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second. You're getting the most amount of data to each frame, and that's gonna just look the best. And plus, those frame rates are available in 2.7K, which is gonna look great. So this next tip is a big one. To manually control your camera settings when shooting video is gonna give you the best looking footage. And the reason why is because if you use auto mode, depending on if you pan the gimbal up or down, the lighting in the scene is gonna change and the camera's gonna adjust for it. And that's just what it's made to do. But to get a high quality cinematic look, you don't want all those changes. The best way to do that is to dial in your settings manually to exactly what you want them to be. And that's gonna give you the results you're looking for. And you know what to expect. Now, there is a trick that I'll share in just a minute that you can kind of cheat the system and not have to shoot manually. But let's dive into shooting manually. So to shoot manually, or on this drone they call it pro mode, that means that you're gonna be controlling the ISO, the shutter speed, and typically on most cameras you would also be controlling the aperture, but on this drone the aperture is fixed, so don't have to worry about it. But I will say that we're gonna go into the settings and manually control the white balance. What ISO does is it makes your sensor more sensitive to light. So if it's a little dark out, you can bump your ISO up, and that's gonna make the image brighter, but it also introduces noise, which we don't want. We want a nice clean image not a lot of dots and artifacts in the shot. We want crispy, clean image. So the best way to do that is to keep your ISO as low as possible. So I always keep my ISO, especially on this drone, with the tiny sensor at 100. Next up is shutter speed, and this goes along with what frame rate that we decided to shoot in. You always want to try to keep your shutter speed double your frame rate. So if you are shooting at 30 frames per second and 2.7K, which I highly recommend, then you want your shutter speed to be at 1/60th of a second, and that's going to provide a natural looking motion blur. Lastly, like I mentioned, is we are going to dive into the white balance. Now typically, I'm guessing that you'd be shooting during sunlight or daylight hours, and that's going to be anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 Kelvin, and I actually keep mine right in the middle at 5,600. Make sure to dial in your white balance, and it'll stay consistent throughout your whole shot. Dialing in all these settings manually will ensure that the scene doesn't change midway through your shot, and again, you can dial in exactly how you want it to look. Now, one thing to add in when shooting manually is you may want to turn on your histogram and learn how to read that. It could look weird and scary and you don't know what you're looking at, but basically you don't want any high spikes on one end or the other. You want all the information, kind of like mountains, in the middle of that box. And that is where all the information, color and lighting wise, should fall. You can also turn on your overexposure warning, and that'll help show where the scenes are too bright. So here is the little hack or workaround if you don't want to dial in those settings manually. So have the drone in auto mode and point the drone at whatever it is that you want the lighting to look like throughout your whole scene. So from there you can hold on the screen and it will ask you if you want to exposure lock that exposure, and now it's locked. So tilt up, tilt down, and your scene will stay the same no matter what. Now from here, you lose control over everything, so you can't control your ISO or your shutter speed. But again, it's a great little workaround and kind of get you through a pinch if you're feeling unsure about your camera settings. The next tip is to fly using smooth movements. I've got a whole other video about this. I did use another drone for that, but the principles still apply. But just be easy on the joysticks. A lot of people, as soon as they get up in the air, just want to fly it like a madman, and that is not what you want to do. You want slow, smooth movements, and they've actually helped a little bit with that. If you turn it into Cine Smooth mode, it kind of limits the speed of the drone. It kind of slows everything down a little bit, and then also you can go in and manually adjust your gimbal. All right, and the last tip I've got for you guys is to shoot when the light is good. Wake up and get out early, or stay out at the last hour of the day, what they call golden hour. You're gonna get the best lighting, the most dynamic and dramatic looking lighting when you shoot when the sun is lower in the sky, not right above. Everything kind of can get washed out when it's high noon. So shoot early morning, right when the sun's coming up, or right before the sun sets, and your shots are gonna look amazing. And one bonus tip plus a giveaway to you guys: to have a little bit of fun in the editing room. Don't just take your shot right out of the drone onto the computer and upload it to YouTube or Facebook. Edit it a little bit, throw in some sound design, throw in some nice music, and maybe even color grade. And I've actually included a free LUT that you guys can try out and use as a great starting point when color grading and editing your footage. Now, there are limitations on this drone. You can't go crazy with the colors, but you can tweak it a little bit, and it really goes a long way. So I've included a free LUT in the description below. Hopefully you guys enjoy it and are able to use it to make your footage look a little bit more cinematic. Maybe in the future I'll do a whole video just on the editing portion, but for now, just have fun editing it. And no matter what program you're using, whether you're in iMovie, Premiere Pro, DaVinci, Final Cut, whatever it might be, just start somewhere and have fun with it. All right, well, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you got something valuable out of this video. If you did, leave it a thumbs up. It really helps out my channel. Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, I'll see you in another video.